upstairs.
This gives us, bro, we'll just start fresh. We were only 5 minutes in.
Done. I think that I was on a roll on that one. I haven't spoken about some of that shit before.
That's what I'm going to go back down the same path.
Okay.
It was great. I think what's happened is that little chat we had before this has opened up an interesting little pathway.
A little bit. Huh? Just as long as now that doesn't whistle.
Okay, wait on. Let me feel into that. You were just talking about 15 and you were ready to end it. Yeah, let's come back to that. Yeah.
All right, done.
Cool. Okay. Cool. So thank you for going so deep on that, brother. What was sort of going through your mind at that age? You know, obviously were you a really deep thinker straight away at a young age too?
Yeah, 100%. So my mum was 17 when she had me. She was in a Catholic family. Then my old man is like a bogan atheist Aussie. And I got brought up around a lot of adults. So every weekend they were away partying. It was pretty cool. Like, you know, I grew up wakeboarding, water skiing, you know, anything crazy that you could do. We were doing it because that was my dad and all his friends and all of that. So every weekend I was around adults that were inebriated, you could say the least. And they would do some pretty crazy shit. So like I'd watch adults at 7 o'clock at night be so drunk that they would jump a kid's BMX bike over a massive fire. You know, it was like Crusty Demons. You know, all of a sudden, like, you know, we're about to go to bed. It's like 10 o'clock at night or whatever as young kids. And the next second, all these Harleys rock up and there was a bunch of bikies and shit. And they'd all come and drink with like my parents and all their friends and stuff. And then, you know, other times there's dudes punching on with each other and, you know, people passing out and stuff like that. We were always safe. Like, the funny thing is like even when adults are drunk, kids, I think most of the time kids still get looked after. Like everyone around my parents, it didn't matter what was going on. Us kids were always protected and safe. You know, even like if my parents were like drunk and hungover in the morning, one of their friends would be like, "Hey, let's go to the shops and get ice cream." So we'd hop in the back of their car and like, you know, we're talking back in the day where like there was sort of like a big road with a whole bunch of shacks and stuff like that that we used to go up to and party at. And so like we'd just hop in the back of someone's car, like even just jump in the back of the ute and, you know, just head off and we'd go get ice cream or something like that. So
man, people were built different then, hey?
Yeah, we were always looked after. So we were never unsafe. And if anything was going on, like us kids anything could happen and fucking everyone would have died for us. So it was just cool being around adults like that. But at the same time, because I wasn't around other kids, I would just walk down and like I spent a lot of time just fishing, you know, looking up at the stars, wondering why we're here, wondering about the universe. Just thinking. So
can we go to that real quick, bro? Like, can I get you to just close down your eyes for a sec?
Yeah.
And we'll just like I want you to take me to that moment, maybe a moment that comes up first when you're down, you're fishing by yourself. What's the first thought that comes up? What's one of the things you've always thought about?
Well, so the reflection that I have is like in the moment that I remember that's really, really clear was one night just looking up at the stars and just being in awe. And it was just where our shack was. There's a place called Punny Larue, which is in between Walker's Flat and Swan Reach in South Australia on the Murray River. And I used to just walk down and sit, you know, right down. There was like a big retaining wall, so it was all the adults would party up, sort of back more, and then there was just this space where it was like it would almost cast a shadow from where everything was there, and so you could just sit there quietly, just fishing. And I remember just looking up, seeing all the stars, and just being like in awe about how, not insignificant we were, but just how amazing everything out there is.
Yeah.
And so that moment has burnt or etched a memory in my mind for some reason. But I remember just in that moment just thinking, why are we here? And I think that's the reason why I study so much, because I'm still trying to figure that out. And I don't know that anyone gets there from studying a lot of the great philosophers and those people. There's lots of different theories and ideas, but no one's ever got to the bottom of it, and I don't know that we ever will.
Can you spew some of those theories at us right now to see where you're at with it?
Yeah, I mean, like, if you study different religions, so like if you look at Christianity, there's an idea of we're here on this earth, depending on the teachers or the lecturers, it might be that humans are here to suffer on earth to then go to a greater place after we pass away, right? So that's heaven. There are other philosophies where it's like we suffer while we're here to then go to a greater place. Then you have, if we do look at Christianity from a different perspective, because I guess everyone has their own views and beliefs, even in one doctrine. So another one might be that we're here to walk in God's image. But what does that mean? And then how do we prove what God is? So that's another perspective. Another one is that we all have our own purpose, and so our job is to find our purpose and then live it. When you go back to the ancient Greeks, it was know thyself, be thyself. So that's another philosophy. But then the question is, like, how do you know who you are? So is the purpose of life then to figure out who you are? Is that just the whole purpose of life?
Who are you?
Who am I?
Coming back to that same question, but let's go to another depth, because it's like, if you're understanding these aspects of, as you said, know thyself, be thyself, and finding purpose within self, because as you're right, like, I think a lot of people worry so much about the world around us and the judgments that help shape and create the purpose, rather than actually going within and going, what do I actually love doing? Because love, for me, is such a high value. It'd probably be number one. Because if I live in love, then love being a polarity, the black and white, the plus and minus, and the both sides of the coin kind of aspect, I can appreciate life, rather than going, I need to go towards my passion because it's going to be this, this, and this, or my purpose and this, this, and this. But why is it, do you feel that people are so fucking caught up on that? Why is it that men especially, like, we aren't a man if we don't have purpose, right? That's what they say. That's what we hear. But it's like, what even is a fucking purpose? Like, how do you create it? How do you cultivate it?
Well, I see. There's where people come unstuck, right? Because what if you don't create it?
Yeah.
What if you have it?
Yeah, it's always within you, right?
Yeah, and so that's a lot of people come to me and they say, so just on that, I've got an event called Thrive Time, and the way that came up was that I was studying all this personal development, and I was going to all these personal development events back 15, 18 years ago. And, would jump up and down, high five people, and I'm fist pumping the air. And then I'm learning all these different techniques and tools and shit like that. And then I dived into spirituality pretty heavily, like New Age spirituality, for a couple of years. What I found was a lot of the times, first of all, a lot of the people in those communities are trapped in a paradigm that gives them immediate gratification but doesn't help them long term. And there are a lot of people who say, it does help long term, but if you look at the results of your life, if your cash flow ain't going up, if your health isn't getting better, if your mindset isn't helping you to crush it and you to solve bigger problems, then you ain't doing shit. I hear people, that come to my events and they're like, but it's all about the frequency, and maybe you just don't understand because you've got a high frequency. And I'm like, okay, first of all, you think that I haven't studied that shit. I know more about physics than what you could possibly comprehend. So now, I'm not. If they're a physicist, different story, right? But the average person who goes and studies some woo-woo, spirituality, they've never studied quarks and quantum theory and all that. That people use the word quantum, but that doesn't mean shit, right? Because they just go, energy is quantum, therefore I understand energy, and therefore I understand quantum. There's like,
I love that.
So quantum physics is essentially mathematics.
Yep.
So unless you're doing advanced mathematical equations about how the universe works, you don't know shit about quantum physics. Now, from there, you can take the theories of quantum physics, which is theoretical physics. You can take some of the principles and then you can implement them into human behavior. That's not really quantum physics. So, when we're talking about quantum physics, we're talking about things like quarks and leptons and, there's a whole bunch of crazy shit that you can go into, like electrodynamics, thermodynamics. These are things that these people have never studied. So even though some of the principles might be there, like a principle of health might be that your energy increases and you feel good. That doesn't mean that you understand health. Just because you're feeling better and your energy has increased. There's a lot of shit that goes into understanding what health looks like and how to get there. So anyway.
Oh, clip that.
Yeah. So I would go to a lot of these events and, first of all, when I'm in a spirituality event, a lot of motherfuckers just float in on clouds and then they float back out again. And they're like, I'm all in peaceful and
spiritually bypass pretty much everything.
100%, right? Like, you don't understand because you're at a different frequency. And I'm like, right, let's look. Let's have a look here, fucking Karen. First of all, you're 40 and you look like you're 90, so therefore you ain't doing that well. Second thing is you're broke as shit. The third thing is you have no real challenge that you're taking on in life. And if you want to look at a person, adversity creates the character. So if you're running away from problems and challenges and shit and trying to live an easy life, you're not doing anything. So I would find all these people that were like you just said, spiritually bypassing, and they would use these almost judgments on other people, even though, you know, obviously they're non-judgmental, because that's non-judgmental spirituality and shit, right? Like, I never judge anything, and I'm like, get fucked.
We judge as humans, it's normal.
100%, right? Like, even that stuff, like, this is where we go down into deep thinking. If you understand what a judgment is there to understand things. So we judge things to understand them, and that means that we separate one thing from another. So how can you understand the difference between me and an iPhone if you don't judge it? True?
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
So we judge everything.
Yeah.
The difference is, do the judgments create our own internal pain? So if I judge the iPhone, I go, fucking iPhone, then I have a negative connotation to that iPhone, therefore it's a negative judgment or a disempowering judgment. That then causes us pain. Pain is a motivator for change. So what it's trying to teach us is it's trying to get back to what you spoke about before, right? Love. So love is a synchronicity of both sides. So if I judge something as being disempowering, or as, you know, you could call it a negative or a disadvantage, what it's doing is it's creating pain, saying you need to go back in there and actually see it for what it is. Now that's again where the spirituality community come in. They go, we don't judge anything because everything is what it is. And I'm like, so if I shit on your lap, are you going to judge me for it? Here's something funny, right? Because I've been around the traps for way too long, and I've worked with way too many. I've already sworn on your podcast. So
Bro, you can swear as much as you want. This is how I speak in my marketing and stuff, so it's fine.
Awesome. So I've worked with way too many bellends over the years, right? Where you know, like there was this. I did this event years ago in Adelaide, and they had this spiritual guru, and he's sitting up there, and he's like, "So we need to not judge." I'm like, all right, cool, good theory. And we need to sit in our peace. You know, those types of motherfuckers, like no real
Higher
energy.
than now, yeah.
Yeah. So this guy goes on talking about non-judgment and you know, about how we need to just be peaceful and calm and non-judgmental and
no conflict.
How we just, you know the person, right? And anyway, afterwards, we're backstage, like in the little back area, like a little green room. And he's fucking flipping out because he's vegan and someone put cheese on his sandwich. And I was like, bro, why are you judging the cheese? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
You piece of shit.
Like, yeah, just eat the cheese, man. Don't judge it. So my point is like a lot of people create these ideas and these concepts that they try to use that stuff as a deflection mechanism for not doing their own work. And so what I found, coming back to the question that you had about, you know, where I came from and how who I am, I was doing a lot of that personal development work and I found that it wasn't working. So I moved into the spirituality community. And then what I found was a lot of these people were just avoiding doing the work. And so that created its own challenges and I had to navigate that. But eventually I had this mental breakdown one day. You know, one of my original mentors was one of the top Tony Robbins trainers in Australia. And I found that he kept going through these same patterns over and over and over again, where he would get hyperactive and super enthusiastic and set these big goals and go and chase them and do well. And then the next second, like, shit in his life is just all falling apart and he's self-destructing. And I was like, what's going on here? Why is this happening? And so after I had this breakdown one day, I was like, I got to go figure this shit out. And I'd done a couple of NLP mastery programs, and, you know, I'd spent quite a bit on study. Prior to that, when I was a personal trainer, I'd studied like kinesiology and high performance kinesiology through the Czech Institute, studied nutrition.
Oh, nice.
I was into like philosophy and reading about ancient Chinese philosophy and the yin yang principles and all of that stuff. And so I was just like, what is going on? How come I can't figure this shit out? Like, I've learned all of this fucking crap and life's not getting any better. Like, I want to be rich and I want to have a great life and I want to be more peaceful, and I'm working my ass off and I'm not fucking getting anywhere. Like, what the fuck is going on here? And so I just had this meltdown, and I went to a cafe and I sat there for 4 days. And, you know, obviously I went home in between when they closed the cafe. I wasn't one of them like creepy fucks that just sat there in the cafe by myself with the lights off. So, you know, I go to this cafe and I just started mapping out all these tools that I'd sort of had. And you know, I knew that there was something about purpose there, and I knew there was something about goals that needed to be there. And so I just created this basic map for my life. That event became what I'm known for now, which is my Thrive Time event, which is all about creating your success map in life. Now, that map and the knowledge that I've had has grown over 13 years. And, now I've spent well over $1 million on studying coaches and everything like that. But what I found was that unless you have a success map in your life, it is almost impossible to figure out where you're going. Now, the other principle that I learned, there was a famous quote that I came across from when Michelangelo created the statue of David. When I went and did personal development, everyone was teaching success principles and how to succeed and achieve and how to get to peace and how to be more spiritual and all this stuff. What I didn't realize there was that that's teaching people how something worked for somebody else. If you're lost and I give you a tool or I tell you how to do something, all I'm doing is I'm giving you a 1 kilogram weight that you're putting in your own backpack. That's not much. But if enough people tell you what you should do and how you should live, eventually that backpack will become really fucking heavy. And so most people who start doing a lot of personal development and a lot of study, they walk around with all this knowledge and that weight is really fucking heavy because they go, man, I didn't do my morning routine and I was supposed to get up at 4 o'clock this morning and I didn't get up at 4 o'clock. That means I'm a fucking loser. And then I was only supposed to have 1 coffee today, but now I've had 2 and I fucked that up. And I'm supposed to be vegan, but I really crave steak and maybe there's something wrong with me and I'm a horrible person. And so all it's doing is it's creating all this pressure and shit. So coming back to the Michelangelo quote, when I heard this quote, it blew my mind because it told me the gap of most of the personal development industry. And the quote was, someone asked Michelangelo, how do you create such amazing sculptures? And it was when he created David. And he said, it's easy. All I do is I chip away the rock that's not David. So my job as a coach isn't to tell you what to do. You're already successful. My question then is, what makes you not successful? And let's chip away all that shit so that you can shine. And so instead of telling everyone how to do stuff, what I tend to do as a coach is I work with people to remove all the shit that's stopping them from being a great person. So when mum and dad say you got to go to university to get a good education, let's just chip that shit away so that you can shine because you're probably not that person. When someone says you've got to make money to be happy, let's chip away that shit and figure it out. And this stuff blows most people's minds because they haven't been conditioned and indoctrinated into a view that allows them to really understand how to live. And I've only just figured this out, right? Like I'm 40 now. I only figured this out probably at like 38.
What triggered it?
Sorry, it's not the 38 isn't that the success map. Like I built that, probably in my late 20s, early 30s. But the thing that I realized about 2 years ago after it was going through COVID and stuff like that, and I really had to self-reflect a lot through that because we were running national tours and, I'd do like 13 stop national tours and filling up events and would do those a couple of times a year. And I had 13 or 16 staff at the time. And, we're turning over well into the 7 figures. And I was always pushing for something, right? And I thought, if I can just get to that next level, like most people do, right? My community is called the driven mofos because when you're a driven person, the human behavior patterns are different than the average person. Most psychology, human behavior, psychiatry, even the health industry, like we talk about the health industry and the mental health industry. The mental health industry is set up for people with mental health problems. So it's not health. It's either mental disease or it's mental destruction or it's mental chaos.
Mental masturbation.
It could be anything, right? But it's not health because health is something that's working effectively. If you look after your physical health, it means your physical body's working effectively. The healthcare industry is essentially a fucking sick care industry relabeled. The mental health industry is a mindset I'll try and I want to say this the right way, but it's essentially the mindset, the psyche relabeled as health when it's actually either chaos or disease or dysfunction or something like that. So going through COVID, what I started to realize was that like most driven people, you point and you go, it's over there if I can just get there. But as you start running, the thing that you're pointing at keeps fucking moving. And so it never ends. And so having worked with like rich listers and professional athletes and so on, they can be as mentally destructive as anyone else, right? Like a drug addict or an alcoholic or anything. So I started to really reassess how to live. And what I found was that when I came across people who were really dialed into life, even though a lot of them were extremely wealthy or doing well in life, they would say things like, you can take away everything and it wouldn't even fucking faze me. And I was like, yeah, but it's easy to say when you're rich. But maybe they're rich because that's the way that they think. And so what I started realizing was that the thing that I have, and this is what most people don't understand, and most listeners who are listening to this now still won't fucking get it. Some will, but most won't. The thing that makes you valuable as a person is the thing that sits in between your ears and the philosophies and the constructs of life, right? If that thing that's sitting in between your ears isn't the most valuable asset you own, and you don't 100% believe that, you're already fucked up in life. And so people are out there and they're like, like, I've got 2 supercars and I live a pretty nice life now. But people are like, oh man, I want to get a supercar one day. And I'm like, why? Well, yeah, because, it's fucking sick and it's awesome. And I'm like, yeah, but you could take away my cars. Like, you could set fire to my house. You can take away everything and I'll build it again. Because the thing that everyone wants is the thing that I have. And that's the shit that sits in between my ears. So the stuff that I have isn't the thing that makes me valuable. The thing that makes me valuable is what I have internally that I've developed over the years through adversities and challenges and overcoming obstacles and learning and committing to my own self-growth. That's the fucking thing that makes me valuable. When you invest over $1 million on yourself, that's because you believe that you're the greatest asset. So I have a philosophy. I'm like, if you've spent more money on your car than you have your personal development, it already tells you that a car is more valuable in your life than your fucking mind.
Oh, Boris, dude.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up because I couldn't agree more. If you're listening right now and you try to challenge that, fuck off. Because if you haven't been using YouTube, podcasts, $2 books at the op shop to grow your brain and learn and become more skillful and valuable in life, then what Michael just said is very true for you.
Yeah. Like, I mean, if you can go and spend $100 on a fucking t-shirt that's got a brand on it, and then you say, I can't go and do, I can't go and pay for, like I've got a $49 a month, it's US, but it's $49 a month subscription thing where every week I do coaching calls with our community. And you can ask anything. And my goal is to help you to consistently grow. If you can afford a $100 shirt, but you say that shit's expensive, like I had a dude who signed up to that for like, I caught up with this guy, right? Like I bumped into him at a car show. He's got the nice car and all that. And he looked like shit. Like you could tell like the dude had just dialed out. And I said to him like, jump on. And he's like, yeah, man, I got to do something. Anyway, he signs up to the $49 a month. And then a couple of weeks later, one of my staff members come to me and he goes, he's just cancelled his subscription. I was like, oh, that's odd. Anyway, I said, oh, why? Oh, I called him and had a chat with him and everything like that because that's normally what we do. Like, I don't care if you cancel or not cancel, but my goal is to help you to achieve. Now, most people are self-destructive, so they actually don't know what's good. So if we can help you to stay in it, we'll help you to stay in it. Now, I don't care whether people buy my shit or not because, like, at the moment, I already have enough money.
Yeah.
So, which is weird because, like, you actually make more money when you think like that. So, like, when you don't need the money, you make more money. But anyway, so the staff member says, well, I spoke to him and, like, he reckons that he's got, like, a bunch of like business commitments and stuff like that are coming up. Now he told me the business turnover is $3 million a year. Now, if he's got a $3 million a year turnover business, he's got a $250,000 car. He looks like shit. He's got this like, you know how some people just don't hold weight well? It looks like it's all fucking watery and flabby
just
and shit.
hanging on to the bones, yeah.
Yeah, it's just all like flabby and shit. I was like, so he's not looking after himself, so he's not prioritizing himself. He's got a young family, so he's got a young child as well. Like, he's essentially setting a standard for that child. Humans don't give a fuck what you say. Kids don't care what you say, even as a parent. They replicate what you do. If you're a leader, people replicate what you do. If you're a business owner and you're a stress head, don't be surprised if staff are stressed. If you're a parent and you're like, well, I want the best for my kids, they're going to fucking replicate what you do. So if you're not living your best life, don't expect your kids to. And most parents hate when I say that, but I'm like, go out there and show them how to live. That gives them a good foundation because they're going to replicate that. Anyway, so he tells, well, I've got these business commitments and stuff like that, and, money's a little bit tight. So I shoot him a message. I was like, hey, bro, what's going on? Like, I heard you, oh, yeah, man, like, just at the moment, I've just got heaps of stuff on. I can't make the calls. And I'm like, hang on, that's different than what you told my staff.
It's a cop-out.
So I held him accountable like I do everyone else. Like, please do not send me messages on Instagram if you do not want me to break down shit and hold you accountable. So, because I get this every day, right? Like, I talk to everyone on my Instagram page. And some people are like, yeah, man, I want success and I want to achieve in that. I'm like, cool, $49 a month. oh, yeah, nah, like, oh, I don't know, man. Like, I'd need to think about it. I'm like, motherfucker, you've been thinking about it for 20 years. Like, you told me you're 20 years of age. You've been thinking for 20 years and you're not where you want to be. How about we make that change now? Because the hardest thing that everybody has to do in their life is make decisions. Every decision for growth is fucking hard because what you know is what you know. So if we're going to go to the next level, we're entering into the unknown. That's why people put off decisions. Decisions are what changes life. Learning more shit doesn't change your life. Making better decisions does. If learning allows you to make better decisions, now we're winning. So if you learn, you make better decisions. You learn, you make better decisions. You learn, you make better decisions. You crush life. You learn and don't make better decisions, you're a fucking moron. If you don't learn and you don't make better decisions, you're still trapped where you are. You're probably a moron. So like, it's about how we make those decisions, and decisions are hard, right? I just hired a mentor. We were speaking about it before. You know, I reached out to him and I was like, look, I need to step it up this year. And I've got different mentors all the time. And I said, look, what's the damage going to be? And he's like, I think it was like 60 or 80 grand for the year. Mm-hmm. And I was like, right, cool, man, leave it with me. Went to Jess, said to her, here's the price. I'm going to do it. How do we make it work? What most people do is that they train themselves to subordinate to other people. So they go to their wife or their husband. They're like, oh, I'm thinking about doing this. I'm just wondering, like, is it okay with you? Jesus Christ. Like, what are you, 3? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't ask my partner for permission, because if you do that, you're subordinating to their values. Now, in a relationship, in an intimate relationship, you have a couple with 2 completely separate value systems. Now, according to DeMartini, 25% of value systems are similar in a relationship and 75% are different. In mine and Jess's relationship, I have a higher value on wealth creation. So who do you think is going to be better at making money, me or Jess?
Probably you.
100%, right? So I have a higher value on wealth creation. So who's going to make better decisions about money, growing money, me or Jess?
You.
I am. Now, Jess has a higher value on financial structure because she's got a higher value on operations and structure and process and all of that. So we go on holidays and Jess will say, like, right, where do you want to go? What are some like non-negotiables? And I just say, here's some things that I want to do. She's like, cool, leave it with me. I'll organize it all. Fucking amazing, right? Because she has a higher value set in there. Therefore, she's going to make better decisions. So if you've got an intimate relationship and you have, let's say, one person who's got a high value on business and wealth creation, and you have the other person who's got a high value on family, who's going to make better decisions about the family and who's going to make better decisions about money? You take the family person who goes to their partner and says, oh, what do you think about this stuff for the kids? They're going to give you a less optimal decision because of their value structure. You're going to go then to your partner. You've got a high value on business and wealth creation. You're going to go to your partner who probably has a lower value on business and wealth and say, I'm thinking about making this decision because I'm a pussy. I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? And they're going to give you all the negative feedback, because for them, anytime we don't understand something, it brings up fear. So they're going to give you a fear-based response, and then it's going to talk you out of stepping up. Couples do this shit all the time and then wonder why they're not growing as a couple.
Oh, bro, it's the biggest thing, and thank you for touching on that, because the biggest thing I see is
I've
that...
just gone like, I got loose.
No, this is fucking amazing. I'm just sitting back and let you do your thing. It's I really resonate with that, because one thing I teach, and we label it with like the masculine and feminine, right?
Yep.
If you as a man cannot be a leader and come to your woman, your queen, and be like, all right, we're doing this. This is how we're going to make money. This is how we're going to keep our family safe.
Yep.
Me get better. Me make more money. She's going to be like, fuck yeah, let's go. I trust you. You're on your mission. I back you because I trust you. Every time they come to and go like, oh, babe, I'm not too sure about this. She's like, unconsciously, she's going, oh, I don't trust this fucking little bitch. Like you said,
I agree.
It's they just lose that peace every time. Every time you question yourself or question your partner, question anything, she goes, oh, well, I can't trust this guy. Because we go back to the lizard brain, right?
Yep.
If you're in a tribe and there's a leader of the tribe and every time he's questioning the tribe, be like, what do we do, guys? Oh, fuck, we don't trust you, dude. Like, you're meant to be our leader, showing us the way. And I think a lot of people whinge about, having leaders, but I think they're so important because
they are.
A lot of people aren't willing to make the fucking hard decisions.
That's exactly what it is. I talk about that all the time in my business events and stuff like that. Leadership is tough because a good leader understands that you're going to piss most people off with the decisions that you make, because most people want to stay where they are. Comfort is the driver for the majority of the population. So when I say to my team, hey, we're going to change this up, they're like, oh shit, change, it's uncomfortable. So if I listen to them our business stays stuck, and eventually they're going to lose their jobs because a competitor is going to come in and adapt and change quicker, and that's going to cause problems. So, I say this to a lot of business owners as well, especially when they do private coaching with me. I'll say, right, when you have problems, you do not go home and talk to your partner about them. Because especially with men, we're taught that, I have this come up all the time, and women in my inboxes, and they're like, men need to talk more. No, they don't, motherfucker. Men don't need to talk, right? There's hunters and there's gatherers. Millions of years of evolution dictate how we operate. Now, yes, we're more logical, we're more intelligent, yes. When we're in our logical part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, we're living our values and shit like that, yes. But has anyone ever done something stupid when they're emotional, either when they're excited or when they're depressed? Of course we have. What about when we're angry? Of course we have. Do we say the inappropriate shit when we're angry or emotional or excited? Or of course. So the thing is that when we're a leader, you go home from your business and you're stressed. Now we're teaching men you need to talk more. But the thing is, they're hunters and there's gatherers. Now, if we just go back, and I'm not saying that all men are hunters and all women are gatherers, and because people get butthurt about that these days as well. But let's just say men are hunters, women are gatherers. Now, like I said, everything is situational. There's always exceptions to the rules. I have a lot of females who are entrepreneurial.
Very masculine.
They can be more masculine, but I've also got feminine women who are entrepreneurial as well. But in their business, they have to be more masculine in order to lead.
Yeah.
So they might be in an all women's business. The person who leads tends to have more of the masculine traits. But all that shit gets skewed these days, but it's a philosophical construct. It's not a logical, literal construct that's developed by science. It's a philosophy. And it just helps us to understand things a little bit better. So guy's been convinced now that he needs to talk more, gets home, opens up to his intimate partner, talks about all the problems in the business. Now, if you're a warrior and a bear is coming into the tribe, logically, it makes no logical sense to go and kill the bear or attack the bear. But we're wired to make that object seem not as big as what it is. So most men are wired to make big problems smaller so that then they can tackle them and handle them. Feminine energy, on the other hand, if you have a look at biology, females when they're pregnant have to be more aware of what's going on around them, because not only are they supporting them, they're supporting the tribe now, and they've got another life form that's developing in them. So they tend to be more fear driven. And if you even look at studies in psychology, women tend to have more negative emotional responses than what men do on an average week. So they're more fear driven. They more worry about things than what most men do. So we're not just talking about now the philosophical construct of masculine and feminine. We're talking about science. Psychology's shown that women tend to have more negative responses to things that happen, and sit on things and ruminate a bit more. So now the guy gets home from work, says, hey, here's all these problems that are going on, here are these challenges, like I'm a bit stressed out. The natural response to their partner in most cases, and like I said, there's probably women who are listening to this, you're probably an exception to the rule, right? Because you're listening to a podcast which is done by a dude who's more masculine and a bit more probably aggressive in the way you communicate. So that there reaches a certain type of woman. There are a lot of women out there who don't resonate with that, and so they're probably more of the ones that I'm talking about in this conversation. So now, guy comes home, talks about these problems. The guy doesn't think they're that big a deal. The female sits on them at night time. Shit, what's happening financially? Are we struggling? Like, is the business going under? And so they start ruminating on this, which then stresses them out. So they become more fear driven. Now what happens is 6 months later, you're like, oh, cool. I'm thinking about maybe hiring a coach, or I'm thinking about buying a car, or I'm thinking about growing the business. Their first response is going to be negative because of the shit that happened 6 months ago.
We can't afford that.
Yep. And then now you've got guys who come to me and they're like, oh man, she's just always on me, and she's like, always worried about everything and doesn't want me to do anything. And I'm like, well, no shit, because the way you communicated with her. So your job is to make her feel safe. And yes, she wants to know things, but she has to know that you have it under control. That's the shit that you leave out. Mm-hmm. So when you talk to her, like I do with Jess, here's the problem, here's what I'm going through, here's how I'm going to deal with it. Everything's going good, like we'll sort it out. It's not that big a deal. And you make them feel safe and comfortable as though you're the protector. You've got it covered. Most guys leave that shit off the table, and then because of that, their partners become more fear-driven. Yeah.
Dude, thank you for breaking that down that way, because I agree. I've started this whole journey based off, the fact that I was suicidal at a very young age because I didn't know who the fuck I was. I didn't have any core beliefs, values, what I wanted to do, all the things that we're talking about now.
Yep.
And as I've, started to really, I've gone deep on a lot of this stuff and recently really started to see, we talk so much about mental health awareness, but there's no mental health action. There's no actually doing anything to support these men in the right way, which you've just touched on, right? I'm assuming, and this is for anyone listening, what I've found super important is men to have a really strong brotherhood. So I've got men in my life, we catch up every Tuesday, they're all coaches themselves and, want to get better and improve. That's where I share some of my shit. That's because I get feedback on it and I got called forward. I don't get to sit in it. I don't get to sit in and whinge about it. I go, boys, they hear me, they validate me. They're like, yep, totally normal, brother. Okay, what can we do to help? How can we support you? What can you do to change this? Now, men, obviously, we love to fix, right? Everything about it is like, how can we fix this? But first, letting yourself sit in it, be in it, feel the emotions on it, okay, and then we solve it. And we go back to native tribes where it's like, I've got a big tie to Native Americans, and I love how they used to sort their things out. They bring the tribes together, talk around a fucking fire, breathe into it for a few hours, and like, okay, brothers, let it go. Cool, let's move on with our lives. I feel like we don't even have any of those basic concepts anymore.
Yep.
Like you said, it's like, I'm assuming you have that yourself. Like you have mentors or mates around you where you can go and be like, Steve, this is going on right now. Do you have any insights on that?
Well, that's the problem, right, with masculinity these days, right? We're going to dive down the fucking rabbit hole, right? Because
let's go.
When we talk about feminism, right? Like feminism happened in the 60s and 70s because of the suppression of feminine energy. Now, then what happened was that there was a bunch of women who we're not talking about the majority, we're talking about a minority of women who became masculine. Because once you fight for something, you're masculine. So feminism became a masculine, almost like a masculine response to the masculine. So a lot of women talk to me about this who are more self-aware. They're like, a lot of the stuff to do with feminism is actually masculine. It's aggressive. It's dominating. It's
driven,
argument. It's So that's and like the term masculine and feminine. I try to clarify a lot when I'm talking about this stuff and teaching it, because we're talking about a concept that has nothing to do with what you have between your legs.
Yeah.
And a lot of people get confused because they're like, yeah, but I'm a woman and I've got some of those masculine traits as well. Yeah, you do. I've got feminine. I can be feminine. I can be masculine. But my tendency is to be more masculine. So I would say I'm probably more masculine 70% of the time, and 30% of the time I'm more feminine. When I'm tired and burnt out, I need to go back into healing, resting, repairing. That's more feminine.
Yep.
Most of the time I'm hot and heated. So masculine in Chinese philosophy is fire and wood. So I'm very more like structured. And if I want to do something, that's what I want to do, and that's how I want to do it. It's structured. It's rigid. And then there's fire. So if I'm angry or aggressive, I flare up quick and then I die down quick. But I go into flow sometimes. So sometimes I've got to do creative work. That's more of a feminine energy. You have to understand how to use those energies and those forces. But again, it's a philosophical construct. So it's just saying, here's an idea that if we use that idea, it helps us to understand things. A lot of people use labels to define, but labels are never there to define. They're there to understand. So someone comes to me and they're like, I've got ADHD. And I'm like, cool, brother, what are we going to do? And they're like, oh, well, yeah, but I can't do these things because of this. And I'm like, shut the fuck up. Don't do those things then. How about we focus on what you can do? Like, I've never been diagnosed with ADHD, but like I've studied a lot of psychology, a lot of psychiatry. There's a lot of shit that I could look at and go, yeah, I could label myself as those things. But the question then becomes, how does that help me to navigate life? If I can use those things that I have as a tool of choice, I'm going to use them. So the fact that I think fast, I move fast, I get shit done fast, I have hyper focus, like most people with ADHD, why would I put myself in a position to lose? There are things that I will not do. Like people come to me and be like, I need to do this thing where you're going to sit still for 8 hours and not communicate with people. And I'm like, I'm out. Because if you want me to sit still for a long period of time, I have hyper focus amongst a couple of topics based on my value system, and I'll hyper focus on those things and I become hyper fixated on being good at them. Outside of that, I'm pretty much fucking useless at most things. So what I tell people is I'm shit at 99% of things, and I just stick to the 1% of things I'm really, really good at. Therefore, I'm great at something. Most people want to be good at 99% of things, which means that they're shit at almost everything, and they don't fixate on the 1% of things that they're great at. what I try to do is help them to develop that success map so that they know where their greatness is and just live it. It's taking away all the rock that's not David, right? It's removing all the shit so they don't have that baggage and they can just be themselves. Know thyself, be thyself. So, you know.
What a great way to bring that back around. And I guess my question on that would be like, why the fuck does everyone want to be like that? Why does everyone want to be great at a few different things? Or, sorry, good at a heap of different things rather than great at one or two things? What is it that the insecurities come in people for that sort of stuff?
So when we look at childhood development, the part of the brain, so when we're young, right, when you're born, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy, down the bottom you've got survival needs. So we are wired as a young child to internalize stuff very young. So a newborn baby, its whole life is based on how it feels. So when it's hungry, it cries. When it is upset, it cries. When it feels things, it cries. And so the first stage of childhood evolution really is that if I feel something and I make a noise, someone else has to figure out what's going on, and then I normally get something that helps me to survive. So that's the first stage. Then as we start to evolve, we realize that first of all, mum and dad come along and they say, don't touch, it's hot. So they start to dictate our behavior for our own safety. And children are impulsive and fear-driven. So if it feels good or if it tastes good or whatever, we do more of it. If it hurts or is painful, whatever, we do less of it. So the first part of the real psychological development, apart from our reflexive response, and I think you mentioned this earlier, which is the reptile brain. If you go up to what is known as more of the monkey brain, that's more of our emotional center. Now that part of the brain, the emotional center, again, is more of a survival response. If we feel that it's dangerous, or we feel that it's a threat, or we feel that there's a problem there, we now trigger a bunch of neurochemical changes in our body to make us feel a certain way so that then we can avoid that thing. So then we avoid that. But if we do this thing here and it makes us feel good, we get a neurochemical change, which then means we need to do more of it. But what most people don't realize is the pleasure creates the pain and the pain creates the pleasure. So when we're trapped, and most of psychology is based on a model of pain and pleasure, because most people who teach psychology, train psychology and shit like that have never evolved beyond it. Now, there are 10% of people out there who have, right? I've met amazing psychologists, amazing psychiatrists, amazing medical doctors, amazing neuroscientists, and some of them been in my community where they come and do my events. They're the 10% that love what they do. The other people are just rinse and repeaters. So they read it in a fucking book and they tell everybody about it. They're not people who walk the talk. But unfortunately, that's like 90% of everybody in every industry. You know, coaching's the same, mechanics are the same, builders are the same. So we now have a bunch of people in our society who are adults, but they're still trapped in that childlike brain where if it feels good, we do more of it, and if it's painful, we avoid it. But the pleasure and pain model, this is the problem, and I'll give you a couple of analogies. Financially, if you work because you're in pain, and this is most people go, I want to create more money so I can have freedom. But what they don't realize is the work is the trap. So they feel trapped when they work, and they go, yeah, but I don't get what I want. I'm not doing what I want to do. And I go, what do you want to do? And they go, I don't fucking know. Okay, cool. So now they're working to make money. They get ahead just enough financially, and they go, oh, cool. The pressure's off. Then they go and fuck it all up, and they blow it, and they go on holidays. They take drugs and party. You know, they overeat because they're still caught in the pain and pleasure. And so when the pain's not there, the pleasure kicks in. But after the pleasure, always comes the pain again. And so they get stuck in what's known as a vicious cycle. And so most people are stuck in a financial vicious cycle, a health vicious cycle, relationship vicious cycles, you know, lifestyle vicious cycles, family dynamic vicious cycles, employment cycles. That's cool, but you're essentially trapped in your emotional brain, which is the monkey brain. To evolve out of that, part of the reason why the success map is so important is because when you start living your values, now values are physical, tangible things, and 99% of people taught values incorrect. Values, the field of study of values is called axiology. Axiology is based on two fields of study, philosophy. And the job of philosophy is to answer this one question in values. Where do I feel valuable? That's the first part. The second is an economic question. In our society, where am I valuable? If you can answer those two questions, that essentially gives you your top three values, or your bunch of values. So where am I most valuable? So where do I feel the most valuable? Coaching, teaching, learning. This is what I'm doing right now, right? So I feel valuable doing this stuff. But then the question is, where am I economically valuable? In a world of 8 billion people where everyone has a role to play, my job is coaching, teaching, learning. So if I do that, I get paid really, really well. So I mean, I'm probably in the top 1% of income earners in the whole country, maybe even less than 1%. Why? Because I get paid really well because I dedicated my life to being really fucking good at something, right? So that's really what it comes down to. I didn't choose coaching. Coaching chose me.
How so?
Because it's what I was born to do.
Yeah.
Right? It's because I didn't find my purpose. My purpose was within me. My job was to discover it and let it shine. So I just have a different approach. Like, people teach people their purpose, or I don't do that. It's like, your greatness is already within you. Let's just clear away all the shit from the implanted values of being a child and being told what you can and can't do. And because when you do that, you can't make effective decisions. Like, I don't ask people to do shit. I do what I need to do. And if people don't like that, they can come on the journey or they can get off the journey. Now, that means that there is a lot of tough conversations that have to be had. But that's what made me a really good communicator, because I had to learn that if I was going to live my life, I had two choices. I'd be a shit communicator and have a lot of relationship problems in my life, or I can learn how to communicate the things that I want in a way that other people understand. Because essentially, like, every human being has a different value system, belief system, ideal upbringing. So when I communicate with people, and I'm communicating especially one-on-one or with family, even though we're family, they still have a different lens that they're looking through. So I say to my family, you know, I'm going on holiday. And they're like, oh yeah, cool. And they think I'm sitting by the pool drinking margaritas and shit. I'm going over there, I'm up in the morning, I'm either at the gym and training, then I'm opening up my laptop and I'm working at a cafe, drinking a coffee in another country. And I'm going to work until probably 11 or 12 o'clock, make sure the team are on track. Then from there, Jess and I will go out and we'll go explore some things. But I want to learn. I want to go figure shit out. And then that's the day. And then I do that again for like 2 to 3 weeks. And I come home and they're like, how's your holiday? And I was like, yeah, good. Got a bit of work done. Went to the gym a couple of times. And they're like, you did what? You're on holidays. And it fucking freaks people out. But I'm like, that's my life.
Because you're not escaping from your life you've created, right?
No, I love it.
You're living in your life that you have. Like, you love it. So it's not, you don't need to go away and switch off and, cut down. It's like, I've got a mate on the coast here, Nev. Shout out to Nev. He's one of the most successful guys I know. And he said, Travi, when I just sold my business and he had some actual time for the first time in like 20 years, he's like, I went to just, a couple of days do nothing. He's like, I don't know how the fuck people do it. I went crazy.
He's a driven mofo.
He is, man. It's epic. When you start to get around people like that, you can't help but take it on. I'm getting around more and more people like yourself, and I'm finding myself where, yes, I take my time to just like, maybe it's an hour or two to just switch off for a sec. I personally need that. I know myself. But when I'm on, I'm on. I can go all day. Yeah.
You said switch off. Can you go to a moment where you think that you were switching off?
Recently? Mm-hmm. Watching TV yesterday.
Okay. What were you thinking about while you were watching TV?
My business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't switch off from the game.
No, you don't. You can't.
It's a thing that people convince themselves of. And this is why, like, when I show this to especially driven people, they're like, fuck. So people go on holidays, or actually I'll give you another example. If you're a business owner and you've got kids, you have a choice. You get to prioritize your life based on your values, which when you do that, you give your family time where you're present because that's what you need. If you do it because you think you should do it, you'll be distracted and everyone knows it. So your kids know that you're distracted and they know that you're not present. Your intimate partner knows that you're distracted and you're not present and they know it. And so what happens is people think that the external world is real. That's a fucking delusion. We spend our whole lives inside of our own thoughts. So when someone gets home from work and they're like, oh, I spend 2 hours with the kids at night. I'm like, really? Now, unfortunately, because a lot of people don't understand how the brain works and they don't really think in depth about this stuff. If I ask them and I say, go to a moment exactly like it is, so I don't let people generalize and go, yeah, but that's what I'm doing. I'm like, no, go to a moment. When they go to the moment, I'm like, what are you thinking about? And they're like, I'm thinking about work. Good. So what you're really saying is I would rather be working than sitting there doing that shit. But I feel guilty. Most people don't know this either, but guilt is an implanted value. So every time you feel guilty, it is somebody else's value that they've implanted on you.
Yeah, right. That makes sense because It's like you've been told to think and feel this way if you're doing this thing.
Yep. So I just get rid of the guilt and shit and keep people in their values. So what I say is, like, I talk at my events and I say, look, I'm close with my family, really close.
Yeah.
I might catch up. I haven't seen my parents since, what's the date now? I haven't seen, well, I don't even know why I looked at my watch, but I haven't seen my parents since Christmas Day.
Yep.
Now, I talk to my parents every week, but normally it's a quick conversation. Life's good. I know they're good. They know I'm good. And that's it. Now, I try to catch up with them once a month and we have dinner or something like that. But when I'm there, I'm 100% present because I want to spend time with them. Whereas what I used to do was every weekend we would go to their house for a lunch or something like that. And I'd sit there and I'd be thinking about work and I'd be thinking about business and I'm thinking about other stuff. And then when I'm there, everyone comes up to me and they're like, is everything okay? You seem distracted. And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. Are you sure? You just look like something's off. Is everything okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And then after a while you sit there and you're like, look, leave me the fuck alone because I'm fine. But you're caught in your own thoughts. They know that there's something wrong because you're distracted. So even though people convince themselves that they're there because they're like, I'm physically there. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not there. They know it. They're giving you feedback. So I just have the conversation with them and I say, look, I'm not going to be there for lunch. Oh, but you know what? No, you want me there for lunch, but I can't be there for lunch because I'm not going to be present. So now I had to explain that to them. When I'm there with them, I'm 100% present. They get my full attention. I'm not thinking about anything else. And so they get the best Michael. They're not getting 5% Michael who's 95% caught in my own mind. That's when you win life because you live how you get the best out of yourself. And that's what I try to do. Sometimes that works because some people get it and some people don't. And sometimes it takes people years. Like some of my friends, they didn't get this shit 20 years ago. But now they get it. They come to my events and stuff and they're like, man, it's so cool. Like, I always knew you were going to make it. And I was like, really, motherfucker? You always knew. Like, when I started doing personal development, you said it's a rip-off and it's a scam and they're going to take advantage of you. And
You're charging how much?
yeah, all of that shit. But now you always knew I was going to make it, right?
Dude.
So, yeah.
It can be a pretty lonely game, right, coming into this space. And I've experienced it myself with, I wouldn't say people didn't stop loving me and all those other things. I think I just made them uncomfortable, so they didn't want to be around me anymore.
Yep.
It's like we become the biggest reflector for their insecurities by doing what we love and what we want to do.
Yeah.
Because most people want to do what they love, right? But they're too scared to do the shit that it takes. I wonder for yourself, bro, like, did you lose a lot of the old, have you still got some of the old friends you had growing up, or is it a lot of just new friends you've created in this space now?
I've got an analogy. I always have analogies for things.
I love analogies.
If you're a car and you drive really, really slow and there's a big bunch of leaves, and let's say you're driving at 2 kilometers an hour and you drive over the leaves, a couple of little leaves get distracted and not much happens. When you drive really, really fast, the first thing that happens is a whole bunch of leaves get sucked into the vacuum of the car and they get pulled along and they go with the car as the car speeds past. Then a bunch more leaves get disrupted, and even a couple of minutes after the car's gone, the vacuum of the car going past, after a while, you watch the car go past and let's say 30 seconds to a minute later, a couple of leaves just start to bounce down the road. It's the same when you're in life. Like, what I teach people is my job isn't to stop and to grab people and to carry them along with me. My job is to go as fast as fuck, and if people want to get dragged along with what I'm doing, they'll get dragged along. But I don't stop for nobody. And so what happened was I started moving and I started pushing forward, and some of my friends came on the journey early. Some of them, it took a little while. Some of them have only hooked up, in the last year or two. In fact, only this week or the last couple of weeks, a friend I haven't seen for 20 years. I've noticed him watching my Facebook things, and he's like, man, it's so cool to see what you're doing. And I'm like, how's business going? He's like, yeah, it's not going too bad and things like that. And he's like, I'm really watching your stuff and I'm starting to vibe with it. And it's cool to see him now starting to understand that personal development is maybe something that he needs. He's not quite there yet to commit.
That's cool.
But he's watching and he's just, and so I have every now and again, I have someone who reaches out. It's really weird. Like I've had some friends from school that I haven't seen for 22 years now, and they've just started reaching out. They follow me on Facebook or whatever, and they're like, oh, it's really cool what you do. Like, I should come to one of your events. I'm like, yeah, cool. You should, but whether you do or not, it's up to you, bro. Like, you do you.
That's the thing. I think there's so much resistance around it, and I'd love to know, with the community you've got and what you do, what is one of the best ways to help people to really break down the barriers that they have to actually going all in? Because I'm assuming you're working with some pretty high level people that really want to get shit done. What are some methods that you help people get to that next level, essentially?
I mean, I work with all types of people. So you were asking me about the friends and stuff. So one of my best mates. I didn't have a lot of mates through school, but I mean, after this podcast, you could probably tell why. Anyway, I got to laugh at myself sometimes. So that mate, after I left school, I ended up, moving to a different area, and I hung out with a lot of really cool dudes. Like I love hardworking people. So like my old man's a builder, my brother-in-law's a plumber. I'm a diesel mechanic, I'm a diesel mechanic by trade after I left school. So I've got like that blue collar worker blood in there. No bullshit. Say it as it is. Like you fucking grind, you work hard. And so I've got a soft spot for blue collar workers,
Same.
Especially when they grind. So anyway, I used to hang out with a lot of those guys, and after work I would leave work, I would go straight to the gym, I would train, or I'd go home, quickly eat, go to the gym, train, and then I'd go catch up at my mate's house, and we'd all sit around and would all polish off a six pack or something like that. I never drank beer, but it'd be like Woodstocks or Cougars, or I don't even know if they still make them. Yeah. That was definitely if I was feeling a little bit softer, I'd go the UDLs. But we'd all sit around, they'd smoke weed and stuff. I never got into drugs, so I've never done any of that sort of stuff. It just never. I'd rather spend money on cars than spend money on drugs. And so they'd all sit around, smoke weed, and they just got into that stuff. And anyway, they became really close friends for about a 5-6 year period, and would hang out quite a lot. Pretty much did everything together. And then we grew apart as I went through, my own personal development, my own personal growth. But anyway, about, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, I tried reaching out to that best mate that I had, whose house we used to go over, and like we were ride or die. I couldn't find him on Facebook, and I was like, so I tried to message him, and no message. Anyway, about 2 years ago, I got a message on Instagram, and it was him. And so he hit me up with a friend request, and I said, "Hey bro, how's everything going?" He's like, "Yeah, good." Said, "How's it all going?" Said, "Oh, yeah, good man. We should catch up." So I caught up with him. We go out for dinner, and I said, "Look, what's been happening?" He's like, things got a bit hectic. I just got out of jail." And I said, "Oh, fuck, what's going on?" He's like, "Well, I might be going away for a long, long time." And I said, "Why? What's going on?" Anyway, he was doing major drug importation and all of that sort of stuff. Like we're talking fucking crazy volumes and all of that stuff. And he's always been a really smart, intelligent guy, but he's also been a real hard worker. And he's a real friendly dude, so he knows everybody. But the problem is you take somebody who knows everybody, who is a people pleaser, who likes to look after everybody. And what was happening was he was using drugs, and he started getting into meth, and people were like, "Oh, can you get me something?" And so he's like, "Yeah, I'll get you something." And then after a while, it's like, "Hey, can you get some more for this guy?" And so then all of a sudden, he's got a little black book, and he's getting something for everybody. And then eventually, he was put into a position where the person who was bringing in the large quantity said, "Well, look, you're like doing a lot of volume. Why don't you just take over take it over, and I'm fucking out." So he ended up taking over that, and ends up getting busted and raided. And he said, like, I think he was telling me like they were doing like $1 million a month. $1 million a week. So they were doing some pretty crazy shit. But he said, like, when you're doing that, he said it was like the wildest time because of the partying and the drugs and the like just the crazy shit that was going on. But he said, I knew that one of two things was going to happen. I was going to get arrested, and I was going to end up in jail, or I was going to end up dead. And he's like, it got to a point where you just knew that was the only thing that was going to happen. He said, my future, I had no future. It was just death or jail. And I was just trying to avoid jail for long enough and avoid death for long enough, hopefully to live another year.
Damn, man.
And like, this is like one of the kindest, most awesome dudes that I've ever met. And I was like, fuck, bro. The people that he was hanging out with weren't the nicest people and all that sort of stuff. And so anyway, he ended up getting busted, and he did some time. And anyway, he just had his most recent court case, and because when he reached out, what he was reaching out for was he said, look, I've got two choices. I found out he's got 2 kids as well, and him and his partner separated. And for him, like, his kids are everything. And I think for a lot of people out there, like, if you don't really have a lot of stuff going on in life, kids become your everything because that's your reason to change when you don't have a reason. For him, that was that reason. So he said, look, man, I know my boys need me, so I got to get my shit together. So he started going to rehab. He started doing everything, and he came to my Thrive Time event, and got his success map and all of that, and he realized like the thing that he loves is helping people. That's why he got into drugs. He just started fucking helping everybody.
Yeah.
But he didn't realize that he was helping people in the wrong path. And I think sometimes entrepreneurs, there's a very fine line between being an entrepreneur and a criminal, right? It's like, because you're always
two of the
pushing,
same, right?
Yeah, you're always pushing boundaries and stuff like that. Like, you know, you got to think
outside the box.
And yeah, so, you know, he ended up there, but you know, much to his credit, over the last 2 years, I guess it's been, you know, since we've been in contact, he's pretty much been to every rehab session on time, early. You know, now he's mentoring other people and all that stuff. And so I've started helping him out to try to become a coach. And I said, look, man, there's so many people who are in your position or who are heading down a bad path who need you. You know, you got to start learning some coaching tools to be able to help them out of that stuff. So, you know, when you asked about old friends and stuff, that's a friend that went off on their path and then came back into that path. But it's because I never stopped.
Oh, you know what's crazy? I've just had a conversation with someone who just reached out recently. I knew him 15 years ago. I haven't heard from him. And all of a sudden he pops up on Instagram, reaches out, like, bro, I've been loving watching your stuff. I find out literally just then, what's that, 2 or 3 hours ago, he's just gotten out of prison 8 months ago, similar sort of thing. And in there, he has created this, he said it's like 50 kilos worth of paper, a blueprint on something he's about to reveal to the world on helping people.
Okay.
Literally this incredible like piece of work that he was in there for 2.5 years, and he was getting bullied and shit by all the other prisoners saying, oh, you're a fucking weirdo. What are you doing? He's got all this paper, like Rain Man style all over the floor, like writing all these things. And he's almost had like this awakening within prison. And same thing, he was that really lovely guy that just wanted to be friends with everyone. So as you said, when you know we think about it, it's like, shit, do most people pleasers become drug dealers? Like it's almost like, how can I help you? Oh, cool, you need that. Let me do anything I can for you. So now he's realized same thing. He loves fucking helping people. He just wants to, more than anything, he wants to connect with me to see how I got into it, what I learned, what sort of tools and modalities, which leads me and segues me to the question of, what do you believe are some of the best tools for people to help people? You know, whether what modalities you've learned, what teachings, what learnings.
Man, what modalities have I learned? Fuck.
Let me start at 1 for 1,000.
Yeah. I don't think there is a best, right? Because it's the hammer analogy. Like, a hammer's a good tool, but you can't, if you use it on glass, you fuck it.
Too.
Yeah, that's very true. There's a right tool for the right situation. So I got asked this, you know, on an earlier podcast that I did today, and we were talking about ice baths, and he said, what do you think of like ice baths and meditation? I was like, yeah, good, but for most people, it's just another fucking thing, right? It's just another thing that it's just another tool that they're trying to use to escape from doing the work.
Yep.
Are ice baths good? Maybe. It depends. There's a time and a place and a person, and do I use ice baths? Yeah, I mean, if you're a professional athlete. But let's look at this. If you're a professional athlete and you're using an ice bath, ice supposedly reduces inflammation. Now, inflammation is there because it allows your body to heal and recover. So if you use too much of an ice bath, you essentially hinder recovery. If you don't use an ice bath, you get too much inflammation, which hinders recovery. So too much or too little, that can be the problem. So just because you're using an ice bath, does that mean that you're spiritual? Does that mean that you're developing yourself personally? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's just another fucking escape tool.
Yeah.
You know, meditation. I got asked this again earlier. Do I meditate? And the answer is no. I don't need to meditate. And the reason why I don't is because the reason why people meditate is because they're trying to be more present. Here's how you get present. You live your values. When you live with implanted values, your brain becomes noisy because you're trying to people please. So when I'm sitting here talking to you, I have nothing in my head.
Same.
I mean, it's probably pretty fucking obvious after this podcast, right?
It's like you're in a vortex. Hey, you're just here. This is all that matters right now.
So if you structure your day based on your values and you structure your week and your month, you're present all the time. So do I need to meditate? No. Because I would rather if I'm going to meditate for an hour every day, that's 7 hours a week. That 7 hours a week is essentially a standard working person's day. So if I put in an extra day a week just on a standard working week, now most days I work way longer than 7 hours, but if I do an extra 7 days, you times that over the year, you times that by 10 years. Is it no wonder why some people just crush and destroy people in results? So if I can find a better tool, now I do have some tools. So I created a tool called the Process of Potential. There was a study that came out And Dr. John DeMartini put me onto this. He's a friend of mine and a colleague. He put me onto this. I was studying yin and yang philosophy and ancient Chinese philosophy. I don't believe in positive thinking. I don't believe in the whole peace, finding inner peace and shit. Because if you study ancient Chinese philosophy or any ancient philosophy, they pretty much give you clues. So when you have a yin yang tattoo on one arm and a peace tattoo on the other arm, peace and war go together. They're part of the yin yang. Peace is just one side. Now, when you're trapped in that childlike mind, remember, we want to avoid pain and we want to avoid fear. Chaos and stress and pressure and all that shit is the thing that you're trying to avoid. And you're trying to get more peace and pleasure. And most people talk about gratitude, but when they're talking about gratitude, they're talking about elation, not gratitude. When you're grateful for the challenges that you go through in order to get to the place of feeling present. So after a hard work day, and driven people will understand this, you work your ass off today, and at the end of the day, you're like, fuck yeah. That's a moment of gratitude. Gratitude is not elation. So when I see people at events and they're all crying and shit and their arms are up in the air and they're like, oh, I'm so grateful. That's normally elation. That's an elated, excited state. When you're grateful, that's like looking at a sunset or a sunrise and you sit there and your brain just blanks out and just like, there's nothing. It's just everything is just there, present, and you're in the moment. That is gratitude. So the great philosophers talk about peace, love, gratitude, inspiration, and beauty being all the same thing. They're essentially, it's a moment, and there's no such thing. Like I hear people saying, I'm just a grateful person. Bullshit. Because every moment in our brain is a snapshot in time. Humans change the way we feel moment by moment. So I'm not a grateful person. I have moments of gratitude. I have moments of inner peace, but I also have moments of inner turmoil. I have moments of stress and pressure. I have moments of elation and excitement. I have moments of happiness and unhappiness and fucking feeling depressed. But they're moments. When we start to generalize shit, people say things like, oh, I'm a fairly happy person. Compared to what? Like, it's a comparison. Compared to what? Like, I get asked all the time, like, are you happy? And I'm like, I don't fucking know, because I don't even compare myself to that.
Yeah.
It's just most people can't understand that, because when you're in the childlike brain, you're in the pleasure, pain. I'm in the I'm just living for the love of life. Love of life means both sides. So when I'm doing this, I'm not happy. Like, I'm not happy that I'm here, but I'm not unhappy that I'm here. It's just, this is the shit that I'm born to do, so I do it. Oh. That's what makes me peaceful.
Fuck, I love that. It's like living in the duality creates so much less stress because you're just embracing all that is.
Yep. And even with stress, when we look at stress, if you go and study stress, you've got eustress and distress. Eustress is what's called beneficial stress. So when you live your values, you push yourself into pressure and you're like, fuck yeah, I love this stuff. That's like the gym session, right? I don't like going to the gym, but what happens is there's something in my brain that's like, man, I gotta go. And then I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to. Yeah, but I want to go. Nah, come on, man, just get in the car. And I'm like, I don't want to fucking get in the car. Ah, man, I'm going to drive to the gym. Then all of a sudden, once I start training, it's like I'm in, and I'm present in that moment, and I'm working out, and I'm like, man, this fucking sucks, but I love it. That's what you want to find every day, and the more you can sit in that place of like, it's challenging and it's stressful, but at the same time, it's like I'm loving this shit. When you're in that moment, man, that is growth right there. That's where you get gratitude at the end of the day. That's where you get inspiration. That's where you get love. That's where you become more present. We want to find those moments, but again, because our society is more trapped in I can't remember the philosopher who coined this term, but it's in the lower mind. When you're trapped in the lower mind or the animalistic mind, you're in that like pleasure, pain, seek and avoid, impulse and fear. When you live like that, life's a big fucking pendulum that swings. And so you get, you're happy for a little while and then you're unhappy. And then when you're unhappy, you're like, man, how do I get back to happiness? When you're when you've got both of those two things, you're like, mate, I'll take happiness and unhappiness at the same time. Like, I'm just going for it. And so you become more focused on like a mission, a life purpose. Like, my purpose is to help people perform better in life and business. That's all I do. I wake up. That's all I think about. I don't really give a shit about whether people like me or don't like me. I don't care about anything else. All I want to do is help you perform better today. And that's what I'm going to do. Whether I'm on a podcast, whether I'm working with a person. I have clients who fucking hate my guts most of the time. And it's because I would hate my guts too if I'm pushing them to grow. Now, I don't mean that. Like, most of my clients, I only work with clients that I actually like working with, so I'm lucky these days. But, you know, like a lot of them, I get invited to their weddings. You know, I had a client who bought a $2.5 million yacht. And when I first started with him 5 years ago, he rocked up in this old beat out Rodeo, like not making enough money, tired. You know, he was stressed out all the time. And now he's like, the other day, I took out one of my clients in the car and we went out and grabbed a coffee on Monday. And we're sitting, there's a marina. And anyway, I came back from the bathroom and I heard this boat pulling up. And anyway, I look over the side and there's my client rocking up in his yacht. And he's like, man, we just came down here for lunch, brother. Good to see you. Like,
oh, no way.
And so like,
fuck, that's cool.
It's fucking awesome. But though, coming back to what I was talking about was like, those relationships are built on both pleasure and pain. My job is to get the best out of them. Do they like that I get the best out of them all the time? No. Because humans have a natural tendency to want to go back to what's comfortable, and they don't like accountability and shit like that, because we want to do we want to do what feels best in the moment. But what feels best in the moment isn't what's best for us. So we have to ask ourselves the question, do we want to do what's best for us, or do we want to do what feels the best in the moment? Because they're two completely different things.
Oh, let that land for a second, guys, because how many times in the last week have you done that? Where, as Michael said a few times during this, like we're always, most of us are going towards pleasure and away from pain. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're innately wired to do, right? As animals, in us, it's like trying to protect us at all times. You have to consciously make this decision to go towards that fucking fear. You know, like that's one thing, what you said before resonated so hard, dude, because I don't know if it was Hormozy or Alex Williamson, whoever it bloody was, Chris Williamson, sorry. They talk about strategic stress. Mm-hmm. It's like, I find strategic stress every week I can, every day. Like today's strategic stress. I didn't really have time to come and do a podcast, but I really wanted to.
Yep.
So I fucking made it happen. I really wanted to meet you. So I was like, okay, if I do this, yep, oh, cool. And I'm literally by the skin of like 15 minutes just fitting most of the things in today. And I was just like, fuck it, let's do it. You know, and I'll fit my clients in a bit later tonight. It's fine. But how many people do you find can't even do that? Can't even just push their day a little bit, half hour to an hour longer, because they're worried about whether they're going to get the right amount of sleep or not.
It's like they just don't know what they want.
Yeah, and when you know what you're after, you will push through that shit every day, hey?
Yeah. Same like when we came here, you know, Jess said, oh, you know, it's good when we got the invite to come down here, and it was, you know, for another podcast. I said, look, we've got a podcast that we've been invited to. Normally, if it's a really small podcast, there's no point spending a couple of grand flying over and all that shit. But I said, fuck it, let's go.
Yeah, sick.
So, you know, within like a couple of weeks, we booked the accommodation and fly over here and all that stuff. And we just had that one podcast booked. And Jess was like, oh, cool, we can, you know, sort of hang out a little bit and go and see some sights and shit. And I was thinking, like, how do I get like another 3 or 4 podcasts booked in and like ram this shit up?
Yeah.
So, but that's you know, the way that we live, because we've got a purpose to do what we do, you know. And I think it really comes down to being honest with yourself. Like, people talk about honesty, but they fucking lie all the time. And I think that's gone off.
Oh, that's cool. That's fine. As long as this bad boy's going, we're good.
They lie to themselves all the time, because like I've got a principle, a framework that I got a lot of frameworks, but one of my main ones is clarity times by standards plus environment equals your success. So first of all, clarity is like, what am I really here for? What am I here for? Where's my greatness? What challenges am I prepared to take on in life what do I enjoy? What challenges do I enjoy taking on? So that comes down to your success map, right? That gives you the clarity. Then after that, you go, okay, standards. What are the standards that I want to operate under? Now, for Jess and myself in our relationship, we had this conversation a couple of years ago where we sat down and we said, because we would clash a little bit. You know, we both work in the business. She's a, you know, very operationally genius. I'm more people, just go hard, make shit happen. I talk all the time. She's quiet. I like hanging out with people. She's more like, you know, likes her own space and stuff. So, you know, we're sort of like that polarity, you know, coming together. And there would be times where I would just grind and work really, really hard. And part of her admires that. And I'll say this for all the couples out there who are listening to this. The person, the thing that you love about your partner, or sorry, I'm not going to use the word love because it's incorrect. The parts of your partner that you admire are also the parts that you resent in them.
Fuck.
Right? Jess loves the fact that I work super fucking hard. but it's also the thing that she resents.
Yeah.
She loves the fact that I go and I support so many people, but she also resents part of that because it takes time away from her.
Yeah.
Then there are things that I admire in Jess. Like Jess is very patient and very methodical, but that's also the shit that pisses me off on a daily basis when we work together, right? So the things that we admire in our partner are also the things that we resent in our partner also. Part of the reason why I teach a lot of these things is because our society is caught in a lot of delusions and fantasy ideas. You know, you grow up watching Disney movies and it's like, you know, you meet this person, you take on some adversities, and then you live, after you go through that, you get married and you live happily ever after. Mate, there is no fucking happily ever after. You get married and the shit just starts from there because now you've got to learn how this other person operates, and now you're more committed to learning more about them. And so you see parts that you don't like. You see things that are out of balance in them, and you've got to try to balance them out. And so DeMartini said this to me many years ago. We're having dinner, and he said, the purpose of a relationship, any relationship, is authenticity. And so we become each other's counterbalances. So when you're wired and dialed in, your partner may be a bit like, oh man, everything's too hard and tough. Because when you're elated and up, your partner's down and they're trying to bring you back down. And so you argue with each other in order to neutralize each other's shit. And so I think that, you know, intimate relationships aren't taught like that. It's like, yeah, but my partner should accept me for who I am. But they don't, because you don't even accept you for who you are. Like, we're all trying to grow. So your partner's trying to bring out the best in you and the worst in you because you're observing it so you can get to deal with it and work on it. So, you know, Jess triggers me all the time with shit. But the cool thing is the person that I am today isn't the person that I was 16 years ago when we met, because I'm improving things all the time. When I get triggered, I'm like, okay, why? Let's go in there. Let's explore that. Let's work on it. Let's tighten that shit up and dial it in a little bit more.
Beautiful.
She's the same. She's not the same person. You know, she came from more of a corporate businessy background. She's used to getting a paycheck every week. Now we're in business. We go through stages where we don't get paychecks for fucking months. That's what happens. And then other times it's like it just rains cash and you can go out and do whatever you want. So, you know, part of the reason why I do what I do is I'm trying to break a lot of myths and misconceptions in the way that people live. But so clarity plus standards. You need to understand the standards that you want to live by. When you look at Maslow's hierarchy, and I know I was talking about this before, but down the bottom you've got survival needs. So most people live in survival, which is pleasure, pain, good, bad, right, wrong. And so everything has to be labeled and it's got to be one-sided. Positive thinking is just another part of that, you know, survival response. When you go to self-actualization, which is at the top of the hierarchy, when you're self-actualizing, it's like, how do I get the best out of myself? So like, you know, I go to places and you know, I'll rock up in one of my supercars or something like that, or I put them online, and you hear people say things, or you see people say things like, why does someone need a car that expensive? Well, I don't need a car that expensive, but why would I not have one? Isn't that self-actualization? Like, that's getting the best out of me. But at the same time, I don't need it. So it could be taken away. My life wouldn't change. If I had to sell the car, I'd sell the car. But at the same time, I fucking love the car. I love going places. You know, I had a client the other day who's a business client. I picked him up in it and we went out for lunch and he's like, man, this is the coolest experience. Like, I've never been in a supercar before. And I was like, that's why I have it.
Yes. So for anyone listening, I've been in 2 McLarens now.
Yep.
And the first time I went, it was Jesse McInnes. He's a young kid on the
Jesse,
coast here. Yeah. Bro, I rocked up to his Maroochydore house and I was like, cool, this is
yellow
cool.
One?
Yep.
Yeah.
And he had that at the time and he just sold it to Shami.
Yeah.
But I got a ride in it that day. He took me down to the local coffee shop and I'm sitting there and my whole existence is like, fuck, I want one of these. This is cool. It made me feel bigger and better as a person. It made me feel like more was possible.
Yeah.
And I saw the people that were in his circle. I saw that car gave him access to those people.
Yep.
And I saw you say that in one of your reels. It's like, it's not because of the fucking car and what it gives you. It's like what it opens up in this whole different world of other men and women that drive these really beautiful cars who are high level achievers and going after life and doing the things. You get to fucking meet them because you're part of like car clubs and stuff, right?
100%.
How cool is that?
Do you know, like, if you just go and have a look at my social media, I'm one of the only people who do this, right? I don't really care what people think about me in the car and all that stuff. I hear so many people talk shit about it, but I also see the opposite of that. So I rock up the other day, so I go and take this client out, Ben. Now, Ben has a flooring company. The company was doing about $1.5 million turnover when he started and he joined my business program. Since then, he's had 100% growth. So he's up to about 3 million in revenue. He just bought another business and he did $1 million in 12 months in that company alone.
Nice.
So I took him out because he wants to do some one-on-one coaching. I said, look, let's go out and talk and we'll figure out what we can do. So anyway, I took him out for lunch. We rock up and not only did I blow his brains because it's the first time he's been in a car like that, but we rock up and there's these 4 kids walking with their dad. Anyway, I open the door and this guy goes, Jono, which is what people call me, at school. And so it was Joe that I went to school with. Now he's got 2 sons and they had 2 friends. And anyway, I open the door and they're like, wow, this is a McLaren, this is cool. And you watch their faces light up. Now tell me that you can do that with a Corolla. Tell me you can do that with your Camry, right? So the kids, it made their fucking day. And so I got out the car and Joe's like, mate, I haven't seen you for years. Like, it's good to see you doing well and everything like that. And I said, I looked at the kids and I was like, do you want to get photos in the car? And they're like, yeah, can we? And I was like, yeah, of course you can. So I opened the doors and they all lined up and they were getting photos and stuff in the car.
Was this on your stories?
Yeah, it was Monday.
Yeah, I saw their faces, man. That was cool.
I always let kids sit in the car.
Yeah.
When adults come up and they're like, can I sit in the car? I'm like, nah, not you,
man. No, bro.
But the kid. Sometimes I do, but like when I'm at car meets and things like that, if there's kids around, every time there's a kid, I'll literally be having a conversation with an adult. If there's a kid near my car and they're looking in the car and stuff, I just walk straight up to the child. I don't even ask the parent. I just look at the kid and I say, do you want to sit in the car? And because the parents normally say no because they're afraid of the kids wrecking the car or, like they probably can't afford to scratch it or whatever.
Yeah. But
But I'm like, fuck, man, the car's there for everyone to appreciate. Like, I appreciate the car. I want them to appreciate it. I was that kid. So I want them to believe in themselves enough to go out there and get the shit that they want in life. That's why I have the car. I have the car because it was a dream once and I turned it into reality. Every morning I open my door to walk out to my gym and I see the car sitting in the garage and I'm just like, fuck yeah, dude, you're a champion. Keep believing in you. That's what pushes me to go bigger. So I don't think when you're in the lower hierarchy of needs, when you're trapped in survival, everything's about survival. So you go, should I spend the money here because it makes logical sense? And then when times get tough, you cut back costs and, shit, do we need this? And so everything just becomes about like just needing to do shit, Whereas when you start to self-actualize, you sit there and you go, why the fuck not? I'm going to die one day and nothing's going to matter. Like, I'm going to die and me having a McLaren means nothing to nobody. So who fucking cares? Why not do it? I was saying on the last podcast as well, like, does flying business class make sense? The answer is not really, because financially it makes not a lot of sense. But at the same time, when you get to a place where you've worked hard enough and you've done the right things, when you get there, why wouldn't you fly business class? And I hear people say this and like, oh, I don't know why anyone would spend that money. But here's the question. If you had enough money, would you fly business class? Most smart people would say yes, right? Now, the ignorant pricks that have to be right all the time, that are dense as shit, they're like, no, I still wouldn't. And I'm like, okay, cool, man. You sit in the back, jam between 3 other people or 4 other people. You got to go take a piss at like 2 o'clock in the morning when, you're halfway between here and America. And you got to climb across 3 people that you don't want to try to wake up, or you're sitting there and you've got that like massive piss belly that you like, because you don't want to interrupt them.
Yeah.
And you got to climb over. Man, I'm sitting up the front of the plane with lie back in my bed, listen to whatever movie I want to watch. Like, I'll take that any day of the week.
100% is now with something that popped in for me then once you'd bought the McLaren and you live in the business flights and all that sort of thing. How long did it take you to get to that point?
It's a good question. I think it's a lot of self-reflection, really. So, I mean, we went through a stage where we started making a lot of money and the business grew really quick. And so I just started hiring staff because we needed staff. And so, we had quite an amount of staff. Well, I mean, when I say a lot of staff, for most business owners, the average business in Australia has less than 4 staff.
Yep.
So, we were well above that. And then I remember making a lot of money and I was like, right, cool. I get to go out and when I was a kid, my parents couldn't afford basketball shoes and stuff for me. So like I played basketball in Aero Sport shoes.
Yeah.
And all the other kids had Nikes and Reeboks. So I was like the poor kid. I used to get called POV for poverty. And I got my first job when I was 13. And the reason why I got that was so that I could get basketball shoes. And even now, I still have a fetish with basketball shoes. So I got like pumps. I love
Same.
pumps for some reason. Pumps and Jordans and shit.
Yeah.
So, I started buying them for a bit, and then I discovered Louis Vuitton, and so I got a bunch of Louis and shoes, and so I just went through a stage where I was like, buy all Louis Vuitton shoes and belts, and then Mont Blanc pens, and so I was blowing like, I don't know, I probably went through a stage where I blew about $100,000 on just fucking clothes and pens and bags and shit like that. And then after that, COVID hit, and everything sort of almost got taken away, and I was like, shit. But I think I was attached to the things. And then during COVID, adversity creates the man, right? That's Einstein's quote. It creates the person, whether you're a woman or a man, but it was Einstein's quote. So going through that adversity, I had one or two choices. I had to take the easy option, which was just essentially to shut down the business and fucking implode it and give up. Or, which was never really an option. The other one was that everything in the universe expands or contracts, and I wasn't going to contract to a point where everything collapsed. I would contract a little bit with what I needed to in order to be able to grow again and scale. So Jess and I just knuckled down and we went super hard. And we cut back, we got rid of all of our staff. So like I said, I think we had 13 or 16 staff, and we kept the one staff member that I was 100% sure was legit and super good and fit into that role. And I just got rid of everybody else, and we just knuckled down and just worked. Now, through that time, I realized that I wasn't the shit that I had. So whether I have Louis Vuitton shoes or thongs, it makes no difference. When I say thongs, for any US listeners, flip-flops, I don't walk around a G-banger. It'd be a bit awkward.
Don't you? I do.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Well, not in public anyway. So I started having to self-reflect enough to realize that I wasn't the things, and that if the business did collapse, it didn't mean shit. Whereas before that, I think that when COVID first hit, I was so afraid that if everything went bad and the business collapsed, it would mean, number one, that I'm shit at business. Number two, that I shouldn't be trusted. Number three was that I wasn't a good enough coach, or that I'd done the wrong things. And so like a lot of that stuff put a lot of pressure on me, and it just put a lot of pressure on me, and having to look inside and really say, well, who am I and what am I? Am I the Louis Vuitton shoes? Am I the nice belts? Am I the clothes? Am I the McLaren? Am I all of that shit, or am I more than that? And what I realized was that that's the stuff that I am now, but that doesn't mean anything, because that's not who I really am, because I'm still figuring that out, and I'm still discovering more of myself as the days go on. And part of adversity is me uncovering that. And part of adversity, like if you think about it, I think it was Tony Robbins said a quote like this, and he said, when everything's going well, we celebrate, and when everything turns to shit, we tend to ponder. But all great growth comes from pondering. So without the adversity, we don't tend to self-reflect. And this is why I think daily adversity is important, because every day, if you can put yourself into uncomfortable positions, you have to self-reflect daily. Now, if I'm self-reflecting daily versus the person who goes out there who's smashing beers and shit because they don't want to look within and really think, and then, they're munting themselves out on weekends with drugs and then using food and all that sort of shit, they can go for 6 to 12, 24 months without really having to self-reflect. But eventually, everything's going to get pulled away from them. They're going to lose their business, lose their house, lose their car, lose their partner. They're just going to have a life of self-destruction, because everything has to get taken away for them to self-reflect. So, just through COVID, I had to self-reflect enough to really realize that the external shit doesn't really mean much. It does. Like it hurts a little bit if that stuff got taken away. But at the same time, it's not me. And also, I think that if I go back to human evolution, and by the way, just tell me to shut up if I just keep going off on tangents.
Fuck, this is amazing.
If you look at human evolution and psychology, right, like the first stage, if we go to the reptile brain, the animal, like a crocodile, will snap when something moves, because it's either food or it's a predator. So it almost has like an off-on switch. Food, predator, snap. Then we go to the monkey brain, I guess you could say, which is, we're talking about the amygdala and the emotional centers of the brain. From there, it's important to fit in, because through some phase of evolution, and this is part of a theory, it's not my theory, it's, some of the theories that are spoken about in psychology. it's humans need people around them in order to survive. It raises our chance of survival. So the more you live in survival, the more you need other people and you need to rely upon other people in order to survive. And this is why a lot of people in lower socioeconomic communities need to have big groups of people around them, or family's super important to them, and they might have 4 families living in the same house because they need it for survival. As we move up and we get into the more evolved part of the brain, like the prefrontal cortex or the executive center, when we start living our values, blood flow, glucose and oxygen goes to the prefrontal cortex of the brain, which means we can self-analyze and control our emotions a lot more. So we don't get rid of emotions. I still get angry, but I get angry and I go, all right, cool. This motherfucker just cut me off. Breathe. It's not that big a deal. There's other shit going on. I'm like, all right, cool. Now I'm back driving again. That takes like 2 seconds. To the person who's less evolved and the blood flow is going into the amygdala, they're like, this motherfucker cut me off. And now they're in survival mode. They're like, right, I'm going to follow this prick for the next like 20 minutes and try and ram him off the road, destroy my own car, which costs, let's say 15 grand. So I'm going to have 15 grand destruction there. Their insurance company is going to come after me. Then I've got their car. Then I've just punched them as well. So now I've got to go to court, all of that shit. I'm going to get locked up. That makes no logical sense. But in the moment to that person, that made like every bit of sense to them.
Worth it.
Yep. Because they have to fucking win because they're in survival mode. So to them, it's life or death. They don't, when you talk to someone like that though, they're like, yeah, but it's not life or death. But in their brain it is, because that's how it works. So I think that when you start moving up and you start living more of your values and they're correct, you've got a purpose, you've got your mission, and that success map is so important to get you moving up into that prefrontal cortex. When you get there, you start to self-analyze a lot more self-reflection. You prioritize things a lot more effectively because it's just what you do and who you are. And really self-actualization becomes important. I think going through COVID, it put me back into survival response enough for me to look at my life and say, what matters and what doesn't. What matters is if I'm coaching, teaching, and helping people, I don't really give a shit. The McLaren allows me to do that. The cars allow me to do that. It's cool going places and people look at your shoes and they're like, oh man, Louis. And you're like, cool, brother, how you doing? And then you start conversations. Yep. So like you said with Jesse, right? You rock up. How many people come up and have a chat?
Oh, like no. Oh, well, when we're in the car, yes, yeah. Heaps, yeah. So and they're all watching through the car, like, oh my God, that's it. Because on the Sunshine Coast, fuck, that would be the one McLaren you'll see around this place.
Yep. So the thing is, it opens up more conversations. When most people think about the car, they go, oh, it's a car, it's sick, he must have a lot of money, therefore he must, it's almost like I don't know what you call it, like a status thing. Yeah. And so they go, if I have the same status, then I'm winning in life. But for me, it's not a status thing. It's something about, first of all, self-actualization, because that was a dream one day and I believed in it and I went for it. So it reminds me of my own inner greatness. The second thing, it opens up all these different conversations that I would never have.
Connections to people, man.
Yep. I can park that car fucking anywhere and people come up and have a chat. When I was with Ben the other day, Joe and his kids were just walking off and they were like, man, that's awesome. Shook his hand. This guy comes across. He's like, man, what car is this? And I said, it's a McLaren. He's like, cool. What do these set you back? And I said, a reasonable price house. He's like, he had a bit of a laugh and he's like, oh yeah, cool, man. What do you do for work? And so it started the conversation.
Yeah, gotcha.
The amount of people that I've met, even on social media, people see the car, they check it out, and then all of a sudden they're following me. Yeah,
I love that. It's the same thing that Jess said when I met him. He was such a lovely, down-to-earth dude.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
Cops so much shit, though. This is the thing. Like, there's that other side of it where you're going to get it, right? I feel like, and that's something in the beginning I really struggled with because I'm a reformed people pleaser.
Yep.
Where my value was based off how much validation I get from everyone else and how much of a nice guy Trav is. Mm-hmm. Now I'm like, fuck that, man. I piss people off left, right, and center, and I love it.
Yep.
But I've found more genuine people in my life because of that.
100%.
And I'm more genuine to myself. I love myself. My fiance loves me. I love her. And it's this incredible relationship that just keeps growing and getting better and better. So, with all those things that you've just said, man, I can't wait to have all that. I would love that. In the past, I used to say, nah, I don't care about cars, this, and this. And I'm like, fuck, man, I was stoked when I got my new Pajero Sport. I was like, yeah, let's go. Like, that's my next level. And like I said before, man, I'm like a year and a half into this shit. I can only imagine what I'm going to be doing in 20 years. Because I know I'm not going to stop. Like, I am in my, like, this is my thing. So the podcast, I've been doing this since 2021, 2022 or something, like I'm 98 episodes in. And to me, that's like I'm 2 episodes in.
Yeah.
Like I'm just getting started to myself. And then I get episodes like with people like yourself, I'm like, hey, things are starting to ramp up now. Let's go. Let's start to get, maybe I can get DiMartini in and another 50 episodes in, you know, like that's where my brain goes when you say these things. I don't go, oh, I could never have a McLaren like Michael.
Yep.
I'm like, fuck yeah, bro. I'll have one and we'll drive together, you know, like that sort of thing. So I hope anyone that has listened today, whoever does feel that same, please reach out to Michael because clearly he's got some incredible tools, tips, and tactics. Before we do finish up, I'd love to hear, bro, something that has really helped you on your journey to stay on track. You know, if there's any particular books or podcasts or a mentor that's really been the defining factor for you to be who you are today. I know that's you at the core of it, but if there's anything practical things people could look into that could really help them as well.
It's the same answer to what I had before with the tools, because I know you answered it and I sort of skipped around it. Everything is the right tool for the right moment.
Yep.
So like because people ask me like, what's your favorite book? And I'm like, I don't know. What's your favorite kid? You know, like how do you answer that, right? Like it is hard because when I look back, I was like, if I go through my journey of self-development, when I first started, the first thing that was important to me was I was about 21 around about that time, and I'd moved back in with my parents because I was doing my apprenticeship. I was studying personal training. I got home from work one day and I thought the house had been robbed. All my shit was gone. And I was like, fuck, what's going on? And then I tried calling my girlfriend at the time, and I was like, she wasn't answering the phone. And then eventually, like, I sort of sat around. I was like, fuck, she left and took all my shit. And so I was like, oh, okay. So anyway, I moved out of that house because I couldn't afford the rent by myself. And then I'm living back at home with my parents, and me and my mum used to clash a lot because she's very like-minded to me, very strong-minded, strong-willed, like she doesn't fuck around. And so, you know, that caused a lot of problems. And so I'm going through what I later found out was like chronic fatigue. And I was like, man, I'm a piece of shit. My life sucks. And then I thought, you know what, I need to just make some more money, right? Because that's what most people do is like when your life sucks, if you just make more money, it solves everything. And so the first book that I bought was a book called Buffettology by Mary Buffett, which was about Warren Buffett's trading principles. And I thought my grandparents had made money in the past, and I think we spoke about this earlier with my grandmother. You know, she's in her 80s and still trades shares, and not day trades or anything like that, but they made their money in the share market. They always lived like they were poor. I thought my grandparents were poor until eventually I realized later on that they were actually quite wealthy. They were just super frugal.
Yeah, right.
But we never saw that money.
Yep.
You know, they've never given us any money or anything like that. So that was my first book. Then after that, I ended up getting a book which is called What I Learned at School, What I Didn't Learn at School, which I had by a guy called Jamie McIntyre who lives on the Gold Coast.
I just found this at the op shops like 2 months ago.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Okay, I better read it.
So it ended up I started reading that book. Well, funny enough, Jamie's actually a friend of mine now.
No way.
Some people love him, some people hate him. He cops a lot of shit, but he's a fun dude. So I got that book, and you know, he's this young entrepreneur in the rich list, everything like that. And I started reading this book because I was so desperate to be successful, you know. So I start reading these books, and I'd never really read. Like at school, I was put into special classes. I told that I had dyslexia. I got told that I had ADD back then. So, you know, I really struggled at school. Started reading these books, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to open up a share account. So I opened up a share account. Then I started going to some courses on share trading. And then eventually, one night I was lying in bed and I was so fatigued, but I couldn't sleep. It was like 2:00 in the morning, and I was wired and just thinking, this is fucked. And this ad comes on about changing your life, right? And it was Tony Robbins. And I'd never heard of this guy, knew nothing about personal development. And he's like, right, you can change your life if you just get your mindset right. And I was like, you know what? It's probably all bullshit, but something's got to change. And I think that's where most people start,
100%
right? So
I did.
Yeah, when all these people come to me and they're like, you know, all my friends say it's bullshit. I'm like, look, I used to be that guy. You know, I was a fucking moron too. So I got up and I remember checking, internet banking had just kicked in. And I get up and I look at my bank account and there was $230 in there, and the program was $229 or $228 or something. And I was like, fuck, do I fill up? At the time I had a WH Statesman Caprice that was like 2 years old, and just starting the car would use like $50 worth of fuel. Like it was a greenie's nightmare. You know, it's low, it's slammed, it's got big rims on it. You know, all of that sort of stuff. I'm like, shit, I got to put fuel in the car, but if I buy this product, I can't afford fuel to get to work tomorrow. I could probably borrow the fuel off my mum, but if I borrow the fuel off of my mum and money is like, you are almost better off going to bikies or the mafia. Because my mum, if you do not pay her back, the moment that you say you're going to pay her back with the right amount of interest, she will fuck you up. That's my mum. Like, she's super frugal financially. And so I was like, you know, I got to do something. So I get out of bed, I walk out. It's like 2:00 in the morning. I grab the little handheld phone because I didn't even have a mobile phone back then. The little handheld phone, you know, and I'm dialing this international number to call to buy this product. Anyway, I ended up borrowing money, get to work and whatever. But a couple of weeks later, this you know, audio set rocks up. And I had the USB stick, the original one, the little 256 megabyte thing. You couldn't even upload a full CD on it.
Yeah.
And so you stick the USB stick in, I upload half of the audio program. And the first thing that I had to do was in episode 1 or whatever, they say, you know, go for a walk or do something in the morning. And sorry, you all good? Sorry. And so got to go for I go for a walk in the morning, and the first episode, it's like, find something that you're grateful for. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. And so for about 3 weeks, I listened to this same episode, the first CD, and it's like, find something you're grateful for. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I'm starting to listen. Around that same time, a friend gave me a CD, and on the CD, it had written on there, The Secret. And it was a DVD, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, you got to watch this. Now, he was making a lot of money at the time. I'd bumped into him. I used to be part of a business. I was helping out with a business at the time as well, who they used to run swimsuit competitions and shit. And this guy used to sponsor it. And so he was worth a couple of $1 million. And so he goes, here, watch this. And I was like, well, if this guy's got money, I probably want to watch it. Anyway, I put it on. It starts talking about, you know, you can manifest things and all this. And I was like, okay. I remember watching it. I'd watch it almost every morning, and I'd go for my walk and think of something that I was grateful for. But it took me 3 weeks to find the first thing that I was grateful for. And you know what it was? And I remember the exact moment. It's etched in my mind. I was walking down my mum and dad's street, and I looked down and I could see that I had feet and legs. And I was like, you know what? I'm grateful because I can walk. And there are some people out there who can't. That was my first piece of gratitude that I'd ever thought of. That's where I started from. So when people hear this now and they're like, my life's fucked up and all this shit, I'm like, I get it, because that's where I started from too. But the thing was, I kept moving and I kept committing to more growth. So eventually, you know, after that, I kept listening to all of these CDs, and then I kept studying more personal training. And then I came across a guy called Paul Chek, who wrote a book called How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. And I was starting to date a girl, another girl, and she gave me that book, his book. I started reading, and it talks about health, and I was like, shit, maybe this can help me with some of my chronic fatigue. And then from there, I started studying his courses and studied, you know, his high performance kinesiology and, you know, his nutrition courses. And, you know, the next second I'm flying all around the country going to these courses. So I would work as a personal trainer. Then, you know, we're a couple of years on from the diesel mechanic now. I'm putting all my money back into personal development and personal growth, because I knew that I had to learn more to be successful. I didn't even know that I was working on myself. I just thought that if I just learn more shit, I can make more money. And if I make more money, then life's going to be better. That was my initial philosophy. You know, go down the path for a little bit. I start getting into some more spirituality stuff. And then that's when I sort of came across Louise L. Hay, you know, her book, You Can Heal Your Life, and some Wayne Dyer stuff. And then so I started going to those events. And so I remember seeing Wayne Dyer and Louise L. Hay live. But when I was there, I was like, man, I thought that there were going to be all these like super driven, high level people. Man, everyone in that place was just fucking lost. You know, I'd sit next to people and it was like they were almost smashed in the head with a hammer. They were like so just delusional and tripped out. And I was like, man, this is the wrong place. Yeah. But I saw Dispenza speak and I was like, I like this guy. So I went and got his first book. And then he was also in What the Bleep as well. And so a friend gave me that to watch. So I started just developing my learning. And so then over time, you know, I went through and I started watching Dispenza's stuff. And then eventually I end up in Mexico and I ended up speaking on stage with at an event, a leadership event, and Dispenza was there and DeMartini was there. And so I became friends with John and you know, ended up having dinner with Dispenza. And And so then that sort of like opened up networks, and I ended up going to some dispenser events and ended up becoming or chatting with his head researcher who wanted me to invest in their company because our business was growing as well. And so I just kept opening up these paths. And I mean, like, we're talking 8 to 10 years between those gaps as well. Like, I've condensed it all, so it wasn't like that shit happened in a year. But, you know, like having dinner with Dispenser and all that, I was, you know, I'm already working in the coaching industry and stuff like that now. And so, yeah, so it sort of evolved from there. And then, you know, when I started studying Dispenser's stuff, his original stuff, I was like, I want to go and study quantum theory more. So I started studying that. And then I got into like thermodynamics and electrodynamics. And so I started studying a little bit more into quantum theory and some of the more advanced sciences. And then I hired a chemistry tutor who started teaching me a little bit of physics because I wanted to understand how chemistry works, because chemistry leads to physics and physics principles are in chemistry. And so I started, you know, bearing down that rabbit hole. And then at the same time, I was like, when I go to bed at night time, I want to read ancient philosophy. So I'm reading some of the great philosophers, you know, the Aristotles, the Plato's, and all of that. So it's just been a natural organic growth. And then, you know, throughout the business as well, I'm also trying to learn all the skills that I need to grow a business: leadership, communication management, strategy, operations, marketing, sales, branding. So like I'm studying all that stuff over the last like 15 years as well, and just trying to cram as much of that shit in as I possibly can. Hence why I'm where I am today. So when you ask about the books and all of that, I think everyone should not follow my path. I think what first of all you need to do is figure out who you are, build your own success map. Then after that, what you want to do is you want to ask yourself, where's the number one problem that I need to solve right now, and go solve that problem. Keep bridging that gap. Don't think, what do I need to learn? Because what you need to learn is infinite. And you may be learning shit that is absolutely useless. Go and find, I'm always thinking like, what's my biggest gap now? The problem, the barrier, the obstacle that I need to overcome that's going to help me to get towards my goal. That's what I want to learn. And so, you know, right now I'm reading Vern Harnish's book, The Rockefeller Habits, because we're putting together our business strategy for the year. I'm reading that. I've just started reading, I was going to say Socrates, but it's not Socrates. I am reading Epictetus, his book at the moment. So, you know, philosophy. He was I think he was Roman Greek philosopher, but you know, he lived in Greece for a while and then, or Roman, and then got exiled. So it was one or the other. So I read that shit as well. So I'm always just sort of like, you know,
mixing and matching and putting it all together in a bit of a blend, which
100%.
I love that, because as you said, if you're looking at the duality of life, you're actually piecing a lot of it together and just creating your own stuff.
Yep.
You know, like I think a lot of people get so caught up in, as you said before as well, which I loved, just regurgitating the same shit without actually putting it into their own filters, creating something from themselves and allowing themselves to just come out with, like, this is what I'm all about, man. It's like, I'll learn shit, and I'm learning so much from you today, so thank you. But I'll take time to integrate this, let it sit within me and be like, what do I believe about all this? I love what Michael said today, but I'm like, what do I believe about all of it? And how can I expand on that? Or how can I share with people what he's just shared with me and get people to you, because I believe you're the best part for them to grow right now based on their journey. So, dude, it's been incredible. I guess that